Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dolled Up Desserts Baking channel. So right now I'm gonna go through the different kinds of typical vegan fat replacements and explain kind of the pros and the cons of each of them and when you should use them and when you should not. So first off, my absolute favorite vegan butter replacement is coconut oil. Now I'm sorry to bust your hopes and dreams, ladies and gentlemen, but coconut oil is fat. There is nothing healthy about coconut oil. It is as fatty, if not worse for you than butter. And all the hype about coconut oil being an antioxidant and a superfood and doing all these amazing things, I don't know what the evidence is behind that. Coconut oil is great because it has a super high saturated fat content, which puts it on a similar playing field to butter. Now it's not exactly like butter, but is the closest thing we can get when we're doing vegan baking. And that's really great when you're trying to make things that are flaky, like pie crusts, scones, croissants. I would use coconut oil for any day. In a liquid format, it actually doesn't provide any of that flakiness whatsoever. And I use coconut oil, as you guys have seen in my videos, in brownies because it's so rich and fudgy and really just helps hold that treat together to make it super decadent. However, we will never ever use coconut oil in cakes or muffins or anything that needs to be light and fluffy. The outside tends to cook and the inside tends to stay solid. The other downside to coconut oil is the flavor. If you don't want to use refined coconut oil, organic virgin coconut oil tastes like coconuts, which can sometimes take away from the flavor. Coconut oil is refined using a light process. It's a certain ray of light that gets shone onto it and it actually kills a lot of the bacteria that makes up coconut oil, as well as gets rid of that flavor. The next vegan fat replacement that's really important is shortening. Shortening is a vegetable oil version of lard. Lard is pure animal fat. Ugh, gross. I don't even like shortening at all to begin with. I don't like it because of the way it's made. Shortening is questionably not even vegan because most of the time it is made with a lot of palm oil, and palm oil destroys the habitats of many orangutans. Even though it is plant-based, it is harmful to the environment and to the animals. So I try to avoid shortening at all times. But in the end of the day, shortening, it has many versatile properties, and when used in small amounts, or depending on what you're making, it can actually be the best option. So I'm not going to write off shortening completely, and I will talk about it. The other reason I don't like shortening is because most of the time it's hydrogenated. Hydrogenation is basically a process where a hydrogen atom is added on to a part of the fat molecule to make it kind of sturdy. However, hydrogenated oils are not so good for you because those super straight and sturdy fat molecules, when they're in your blood, and they're really hard to get through the tiny capillaries or the bigger vessels in your blood, so they start forming plaques in your blood, and that's where you get heart attacks. That's why everybody's all pro unsaturated fats, because they are easier for you to get around your body. They're slightly easier to break down, but again, this is a baked good. We're already talking about things that are terrible for you. So I say F it and live in moderation and just enjoy a proper treat instead of trying to cheat your way through saying that it's a healthy treat. Treats are not healthy, okay? That's why it's called a treat, because you should not be having it every day. If it was supposed to be had every day, it would be called breakfast. So other than being super stable at room temperature or warmer, another great benefit of shortening is that it's flavorless. So you can really put it into things that have a really specific flavor. We like to use shortening in very, 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 very small amounts in frosting. And that's for stability's sake and for also to not impart a flavor that is too vegan into the baked good. The only other time shortening is really great is for flaky pastry. It has that light fluffiness, that proper water to fat ratio that makes things light and fluffy. It just has no taste. Anyways, let's move on from shortening. I'm done talking about that. And next, another very popular vegan fat replacement is called Earth Balance, or Melts that we have here in Canada. In the US, you have Miocos, or different basically kinds of solid margarine. Solid margarines are margarine. They are a combination of different kinds of oils, organic or not, that have been put together and whipped a little bit to form some sort of spreadable substance. It is not as highly saturated as, I would say, butter or even coconut oil. The fat content is about 30%, 35%, which in my opinion isn't very good, but it does have its place in baking. It can be used for a variety of different things and is one of the most easy and simple replacements for any of your baked goods. Solid margarines like Earth Balance also have a much lower melting and boiling point compared to other oils like coconut oil. Can be hindersome because oftentimes if you have just just a little bit too much, it'll end up deep frying your cookie. What happens when your margarines melt is that they never really reconstitute and become solid in the same way. They'll have a smell, or some oils will separate out, and so if you melt it, you kind of have to use it. I like to use Earth Balance in frostings because it provides that butteriness, and it has some more stability than regular margarine to really hold up in higher temperatures. And I also like to use it in combination with coconut oil in cookies. Coconut oil in cookies tends to melt and spread and make your cookies really wide, whereas Earth Balance tends to make them a little bit taller. And one of the biggest downsides to Earth Balances or any sort of margarine is that they kind of have a taste that you can't get rid of, especially Earth Balance. Unless it's complemented somehow in the baked good, I honestly will try and avoid it and get rid of it as much as I can. You're able to do that with coconut oil. It's really beneficial for that. Now, comparing hard margarines to soft margarines like Becel Vegan, they are basically the same composition, except that soft margarines don't freeze very well, so you can't really make them into flaky things, and they melt really easy. So they're not as good for things that are supposed to be, you know, a little aerated and have structure, something fudgy, rich. Yeah, you could do something with that. And now for one of the last fat replacements for vegan baking that's used very often in traditional baking is just straight up oils. Canola oil, sunflower oil, avocado oil, light olive oil, nut oils. Any of those oils are used specifically to make things light and fluffy. I like to use canola oil because it's Canadian, or sunflower oil in a lot of my baking. A lot of people can also use light olive oil or any oil that doesn't impart a taste and has a high burning point. I try to stay away from olive oil because its burning point isn't very high. Also not as buttery as butter, so if you're looking to not really create that buttery taste or that really rich fudginess and you're looking for fluffiness, oil is the way to go. Oil is also the cheapest fat, bar none, so economically you're saving big when you're using oil in your baking. So that is a summary of the fats that are like fats. Like, they are specifically to add fat in a baked good. Where and when to use each fat. Cakes, muffins, cupcakes use a flavorless oil with a high burning point. Cookies, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. I like to use combinations of Earth Balance and coconut oil. For flakiness, if you're making bread, you would typically use oil, something high burning point, low tasting, that helps, again, lubricate the air bubbles that the yeast is creating, so you get that evaporation happening and the structure staying. Pastry or laminated, I would 100% use something high in saturated fat like coconut oil or a hydrogenated oil. And for bars like brownies or blondies or any sort of cookie bar, I would tend to use something that's saturated over something that's unsaturated. Anyways, that is my summary of fats and vegan baking and how to replace fats in any of your baked goods. Next week we're going to be talking about sugar, but if you like this video and you want to stay up to date with all the series on how to bake anything vegan, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the little bell. And if you like this video and you want to learn more about vegan baking or just check us out and see who we are, follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Dolled Up Desserts Baking. Thanks for watching!